I'm going to show you how I make my own trout spinners. If you're new here, my name's Barry Rager. Welcome to my channel, Rage Fishing. I have built this channel around steelhead fishing, but sometimes I like to get back to my roots and do a little bit of trout fishing. My favorite method of trout fishing is using small spinners with ultralight gear. The nice thing about making your own spinners is you get to use quality components and you're in charge of your lure color and hooks. So in this video, I'm going to show you the tools that I use, I'm going to go over the components that you need, and then we're going to build a spinner step by step. Make sure to stick around until the end because I'm going to go over the colors that I like to use based on different water and weather conditions. So let's get started. Alright, so let's go over the tools you'll need. You could probably get away with just using a pair of needle nose pliers like these as long as they have a built-in wire cutter. But I would recommend these other two pieces as well. To start out with, number one, a pair of round nose pliers, also known as jeweler pliers. They just have a really fine round end, and that's how I form the perfect round eye in my spinner wire. So you'll need the needle nose pliers, and that's to grip the wire as you're making your wraps with your spinner wire. And you're going to need a sharp pair of wire cutters. An optional tool is a small hook file like this one. Some people are concerned about the sharp edge that's created when you cut the wire. I personally just bend it down. I don't worry too much about that. But if you want to grind that down, you can use a small hook file like this one. Just make sure not to file into your main spinner wire. So now let's go over the components you'll need. When I first started building my own spinners about 15 years ago, I started with a company called Pen-Tac Lure Components. They're a small business out of Northern California. And I called and talked to one of the owners, Sarah, and she set me up with all the components that I would need. I'll put their contact information down below, but it's a small business. You have to call them to make an order. To start out with, you're going to need a preformed wire. These are 4-inch stainless. You can get them in bulk from Pen-Tac. It's got a preformed eye at the bottom for your hook. You're going to need a body. These are number 1 brass bodies from Pen-Tac. Now if you want to build larger spinners like a size 2 or 3, they don't make a size 2 body, but you can get the SL3 body, which is the lightest weight 3, and it works well with a size 2 spinner blade like these right here. Next, you're going to need a small bearing, also known as just a little metal bead. These are 3/32 brass. I like brass over nickel, but they sell nickel as well. You're going to need a Clevis. That's the little bent piece of metal that holds your spinner blade to your spinner wire. These are the Dream Clevis. I just got these from Pen-Tac last year, and I've really liked them for these small trout spinners. This is the size 0. Obviously, you're going to need a blade. These are 24 karat gold plated blades from Pen-Tac, size 1s. I've got some actual genuine silver plated blades in size 1 and black oxide, which is kind of a dull black finish. Next, I tie a very small swivel, barrel swivel, into my spinner head. I do not like using snap swivels. I feel like it makes the profile of the spinner too long, and I feel like you lose just a little bit of feel with that loosely fitting snap swivel. So I tie a size 10 barrel swivel into the eye of my hooks. These are actually by a company called Bloodrun. It's a company that I found for my steelhead equipment, and these are very small. So lastly, you're going to need a hook. Now I like using single hooks. I like to catch and release, so these are Gamakatsu single Siwash hooks. Size 8 work really well with number 1 spinners, but if you're going to bump up to a number 2 spinner or 3, I would recommend at least going with a size 6 Gamakatsu single Siwash. Alright, so let's build a spinner. So if you're 51, like I am, you might want to put on your reading glasses. So I'm going to start out with taking the wire. Now, because I'm going to build a number 1 spinner, this portion of the wire right here, like the tag end, is a little bit too long to fit inside the number 1 bodies. So I take my wire cutters and trim off just a little bit of that end right there. Now is the time that you're going to want to put your hook on. If you use a treble hook, you obviously have to put it on right now, but I use single Siwash hooks with an open eye. Now because the gap on these hooks is so small, I go ahead and I close that eye before I even put it on the wire. Just get it out of the way. I do not like using a split ring. I just think it makes the lure profile just a little bit too long. So put the hook on. Now you take your body, and let's go ahead and build a brass body with a black blade. So I'm going to take my number 1 body, and I'm just going to thread that on the spinner wire. So once you get down to this bottom portion, you just want to take your fingers and pinch that wire together. And then just shove that wire inside the spinner body like that, so it's flush against that eye that the hook's on. Now you're going to take your bead. You only need one with a trout spinner. You want to keep this as small profile as possible, and you just want to thread that on the spinner wire right above the body. So just like so. So next you're going to want to choose your blade. Again, I'm going to do a black blade with a brass body. That's kind of a cool summer color. When the water's clear, it's kind of subdued. So I'm going to take my Clevis, which is the piece that holds the spinner blade to the wire. The fatter side goes down. And then you just want to thread that on. There's a hole top and bottom. You just want to make sure that you've threaded that on, top and bottom, just like so. And that shall get right down against that bearing. So this is where I form my eye. I'm going to take my round nose pliers, and I like to keep it in line with the bottom eye that the hook is on. So I'm going to grip the wire about 1/4 inch above the Clevis. That way I'm going to bend it to where it's in line with that bottom loop. And while I'm holding the wire with this pair of pliers, I'm just going to take my offhand and I'm going to spin that around, keeping it tight as I can against the jaw of that plier until I formed that eye. And it should look like that. So that now you've formed your eye. Now is where you want to put in your barrel swivel. If you've done this correctly, there's a little bit of pressure between your wire that you've bent around and the main spinner body wire. Slide that on, just like so. And this is where you want your needle nose pliers. Grip the main wire inside the eye of your spinner, just like so. And then with your offhand, you want to just take the spinner wire and make 2 tight wraps around the main spinner wire. As tight as you can against that main wire. 2 complete wraps. Just like so. Now you take your wire cutters and you just trim that as close as you can to the main spinner wire and clip off that tag end. So now you can see I have just a little tiny bit of tag end right there still left, so I'm going to try to trim that just a little bit tighter. And if you want to, this is the point you can take your hook file and you could file that down a little bit. Again, make sure not to file the actual main body of the spinner wire. But what I do is I just take my needle nose pliers and I just flatten that down against the main spinner wire. Just like so. And that's your completed spinner. Now I take my spinners, I get these little Ziploc bags from Amazon. I like to use a chest pack, so I take my spinners and put them inside these bags. That protects the spinner from banging around with other spinners, and these things are super cheap. Alright, as promised, I'm going to go over my favorite color combinations based on different weather and water conditions. To start out with, let's say it's dark and dreary, or it's first light, last light, but basically it's a lower light situation. I'm going to put on a black body with a silver blade. Now you might be thinking, why aren't you using something brighter? Well, if you're a trout or a steelhead sitting on the bottom of a river or a lake, whatever it is, that black body is going to be most contrasting to the sky. The silver blade creates a strobing effect as it goes around the back of that spinner body, and so that's going to be my #1 lure. Now let's say it's bright and sunny conditions. The sun's on the water's clear. I'm going to go with something a lot more subdued, like this spinner here. This is a black oxide blade, so it doesn't really have any shine to it. It just has movement with a raw brass body. That creates that strobing effect, but it's a lot more subdued. Another option is just to go opposite of this, black body with like a raw brass blade. The raw brass is sold by Pen-Tac, and it's just not quite as shiny as like the 24 karat gold plated. Now let's say it's somewhere in between. It's not quite the dark and dreary, but it's not bright and sunny. It's just kind of that normal conditions. My #1 spinner by far is 24 karat gold plated blade with a black body. Same idea, the 24 karat gold contrasts with the black, so it makes that strobing effect. This is my #1 steelhead spinner. So if you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comment field below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If I earned it, give me a thumbs up. That helps me out on YouTube. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing, hit the bell so you don't miss future videos. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.